He saved 2 baby Bigfoots. But their mother returned for him. Bigfoot Family Saga Ep.1. The forest slept under a veil of snow. No wind, no sound, only the faint whisper of ice sliding down the window of an old wooden cabin. Inside, an oil lamp burned weakly, trembling in the cold air. A man sat before it, the rancher, his eyes half lost in the glow of the flame. 3 winters had passed. 3 long winters since the night he found them 2 strange little beings trembling beside a frozen river. He remembered their cries, soft, almost human. He remembered the mother, her eyes glowing like amber fire, standing in the storm watching him. She had vanished into the blizzard that night, and he had never seen her again. Yet sometimes when the wind howled through the canyon, he swore he could still hear her voice, a low, aching hum echoing between the trees. That night the silence broke again. Something stirred in the forest. A breath, a shadow, and then a sound he could never mistake. A cry, low, long, broken, not human, not beast. The cry of a mother calling out into the cold. He froze by the window heart hammering in his chest. The flame flickered as if it too could feel her presence. He whispered to himself, "No, it can't be." He reached for his coat, opened the door, and stepped into the night. The world outside was blue and endless. The snow glowed beneath the moonlight like powdered glass. And there between the trees he saw them, 2 golden eyes, watching, waiting. The same eyes from that night 3 winters ago. The Bigfoot mother had returned. ACTI. The signs. For years he had tried to convince himself it was all a dream. The sheriff laughed. The locals mocked. They called him the madman of Frost Creek. But he had kept the memory locked away deep in his heart. And now, standing in the snow, he felt the old truth stirring again. He called out softly, "You remember me, don't you?" No reply. Only the wind through the pines. Then, as if in answer, a shape moved, tall, wounded, barely standing. He stepped closer. Her fur was matted with ice and blood. One arm hung low, her breath shallow. Yet her eyes, those same eyes, still burned with the gentleness of a mother. She took a step toward him, then stumbled. Without thinking, he ran forward and caught her before she fell. Her body was heavy, radiating warmth through the freezing air. "Easy," he whispered. "You're safe now." The creature's hand brushed against his shoulder, a silent acknowledgement. And in that single moment, man and beast shared a wordless memory of mercy. He led her back to the cabin, careful not to leave prints near the road. Inside, the firelight painted her silhouette across the wall. She looked smaller now, fragile, even a mother far from home. He tore his old blanket in half, wrapped the wound around her arm, and whispered, "You saved your children that night. Now it's my turn." Her breath came slow and labored. Then she made a low rumbling sound, a sound that wasn't a growl, but something softer. He realized it was gratitude. The night dragged on. Wind howled through the chimney. Outside, wolves cried in the distance. At dawn, he stepped out to fetch water. That's when he saw it, the footprints. Not just hers. Smaller ones, too. 2 sets, circling the barn, vanishing into the trees. His pulse quickened. Her babies. They're alive. He turned to the woods, scanning the white silence. For a moment, he thought he saw them 2 small shapes darting behind a fallen log. But they were gone before he could call out. Back inside, the Bigfoot mother was awake. She sat near the fire, eyes fixed on the window. When he whispered, "They're out there, aren't they?" She turned her head slowly as if she understood. Outside, something howled again, deeper this time. Not wolves, humans. He stepped to the window and saw distant lights flickering through the fog. Flashlights, voices, men shouting, hunters. Act 2. The Rescue. The rancher's eyes darted between the flickering firelight and the window. Voices carried through the valley, rough, loud, human. The sound of metal clanking. The click of a rifle. The hunters were closing in. He looked at the Bigfoot mother, still weak, trembling near the fire. She knew. Her head turned toward the door. Her nostrils flared, catching the scent of danger. "They'll find you here," he whispered. Her eyes locked on his, not with fear, but resolve. She pushed herself up, gripping the edge of the table to steady her massive frame. He threw a heavy coat over her shoulders, though it barely reached her waist. "Follow me," he said softly. "We'll lose them in the canyon." The night outside had turned cruel. Wind whipped across the frozen fields, erasing footprints almost as soon as they formed. Snow fell sideways, sharp as sand. They moved quickly, ducking behind trees past the barn through the narrow trail that wound toward the river. Behind them, the hunters' flashlights cut through the dark like thin white blades. "She's heading toward the creek," one voice shouted. "Don't lose her, the mayor's paying double if we bring her in alive." The rancher clenched his jaw. Alive. They didn't want her dead. They wanted proof. A prize. He turned to the creature beside him. "We have to move faster." She nodded an almost human gesture, and despite the wound, she began to run. Her steps were thunder, her breath heavy clouds of steam. The storm roared around them. Branches cracked. Ice broke underfoot. The forest seemed to close in every sound, swallowed by the blizzard's scream. Then, through the chaos, a faint cry pierced the air, high, trembling, desperate. He stopped. What was that? The Bigfoot mother's head snapped toward the sound. Her pupils widened. She let out a guttural hum, part cry, part prayer. And before he could stop her, she charged into the storm. He followed, slipping, stumbling, fighting the wind that threatened to tear him apart. The cry came again, closer now. And then he saw them. Two small figures crouched near the edge of the frozen river, their fur dusted with snow, eyes wide in fear. The baby Bigfoots. They were cornered by two men with rifles. The hunters laughed. "Looks like we found the little monsters." The rancher didn't think he acted. He leapt from the shadows, tackling the first man into the snow. The gun fired the shot, echoing through the canyon. The second hunter turned, aiming, but before he could shoot, a massive shadow crashed through the blizzard. The Bigfoot mother roared a sound so powerful it made the earth tremble. The man dropped his gun, stumbling backward. She charged, sweeping him aside with one arm, sending him tumbling into the snowbank. The first hunter scrambled to his feet, but the rancher was already there, wrenching the rifle away and tossing it into the river. When the chaos settled, only the wind remained. The hunters fled into the dark, their screams fading into the storm. For a moment there was silence again. The mother dropped to her knees beside her young. They clung to her tiny hands, gripping her fur, whimpering softly. The rancher stood back breathless, watching the reunion unfold beneath the falling snow. Her head lowered, pressing her forehead against each child, a gesture of pure love, ancient and wordless. He felt tears sting his eyes. He whispered, "You found them. You really found them." The Bigfoot mother looked up at him. Something in her gaze had changed, softer now, almost luminous. She reached out and touched his chest, right over his heart, a gesture of thanks and of something deeper. But then in the distance, the hunters' voices echoed again, faint but returning. The storm had hidden them, but it wouldn't hold forever. The rancher turned toward the canyon. "We can't stay here. They'll track us by morning." He pointed toward a narrow passage between two cliffs, a hidden path he'd used once before. "It leads to the frozen river valley. You'll be safe there." She hesitated, glancing from him to her children. Then she nodded. They followed him through the ravine, their shadows long and strange in the moonlight. The snow had stopped, leaving only the sound of dripping ice and the slow rush of the river below. After an hour, they reached a ridge overlooking the valley, an endless stretch of frozen blue light. He'd never seen it this beautiful before. "This is it," he said quietly. "The world won't find you here." The Bigfoot mother stepped forward, the babies following. At the edge of the cliff, she turned one last time, her gaze steady on him. Her lips parted slightly, and from deep within her chest came a soft, melodic hum, the same tune he'd heard in his dreams. He realized then, it wasn't a call of sorrow. It was a blessing. He took a step closer. "Go. Take care of them." She nodded once, then turned and disappeared into the shimmering mist below. Her figure faded slowly until she was gone, swallowed by light and snow. The rancher stood there alone until dawn, painted the sky with pale gold. The storm had passed. The forest was silent again. He looked down at his hands, scratched, frozen, but shaking not from cold, from awe. That night, as he sat by the fire, he noticed something on the table, something that hadn't been there before. A small charm made of woven grass tied in a loop, delicate, deliberate. Her mark, her way of saying, "Thank you." He turned it over in his palm, smiling faintly. "You're welcome," he whispered. Act Third. The Return and Closing. Scene dawn broke slowly over Frost Creek. The storm was gone, leaving the forest blanketed in silence, the kind of silence that feels sacred, heavy alive. The rancher sat by the fire, the woven charm resting in his palm. Each strand of grass caught the morning light, glowing faintly. He turned it between his fingers, feeling its warmth, its pulse. He didn't know why, but it felt alive. He looked out the window. The sky had softened to a pale gold, and mist rolled gently across the valley. Everything was still. He hadn't slept. Not really. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them, the mother, her children, disappearing into the snow. But beneath the ache in his chest there was peace, a strange, quiet peace that he hadn't known for years. He stepped outside, boots crunching through the frost. The world looked different, brighter somehow. The air tasted clean like forgiveness. He walked down to the river, the same frozen river where it had all begun. The water ran thin now, trickling beneath a layer of crystal ice. He knelt, scooped a handful, and whispered, "You're safe now, wherever you are." A bird called from a nearby branch, the first sound of life he'd heard since the storm. He smiled faintly. Then a sound carried through the valley. Soft, low, familiar. He froze. It came again, that hum, the same haunting melody she'd sung on the cliff. He turned toward the sound, and there across the river stood 3 silhouettes. The Bigfoot mother, her 2 young. They stood in the mist, framed by the rising sun. The light made them look almost celestial, like figures from another world woven from fog and gold. His breath caught. He wanted to speak, but the words never came. Instead, he simply stepped forward until he reached the riverbank. She raised her hand, slow, graceful, deliberate. Her eyes met his. No fear now, no pain, only recognition, only peace. He raised his hand in return. For a long moment they simply stood like that, 2 worlds meeting on the edge of morning. The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying her hum across the water. It wasn't sorrowful anymore. It was a song of homecoming. And then, slowly, she turned. The children followed, looking back one last time before disappearing into the mist. When the fog cleared, they were gone. Only footprints remained, small, perfect, fading in the snow. The rancher stood there long after the sun had risen. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just listened to the wind, the river, the quiet heartbeat of the forest. And in that silence he heard her voice again, not with his ears, but deep within his chest. A whisper. "Thank you." He smiled. For the first time in years, he smiled. That evening, as the sky turned violet and the first stars appeared, he sat on the porch of his cabin. A lantern burned beside him, its glow soft and golden. Snowflakes drifted through the air, catching the light like tiny sparks. He took out the woven charm again and hung it near the window where the moonlight could touch it. It swayed gently in the breeze, casting shadows that looked like hands reaching toward heaven. He leaned back in his chair, letting the silence wash over him. And there, under the endless winter sky, he spoke softly, not to anyone, but to the world itself. Maybe we were never meant to understand each other, only to protect each other. She didn't just return for her babies. She returned to remind me mercy always finds its way home. He closed his eyes and the camera slowly pulled back. The cabin became a faint glow in the sea of snow. The valley stretched wide and infinite, blanketed in silver light. The last sound we hear is the gentle hum of the forest, her song carried on the wind. There are stories that live in the space between myth and memory, stories whispered by the wind and written in the snow. Some call them legends, others call them miracles. But for those who've seen Mercy face to face, they know better. They know it's real. A faint glow flickers in the distance, a shadow moving through the trees. The Bigfoot mother, carrying one of her children on her shoulder, pauses to look back one last time. Her golden eyes meet the viewers. Then slowly she disappears into the white. Fade to black. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to follow the next chapter, The Hidden Valley of Bigfoots. New stories every week from Bigfoot Tales.